Hello and welcome to Liberty Lounge. I am Max Stenner and here is my co-host Samuel Turner.
Hello.
We've only got one guest tonight and that is Councillor Steve Radford, who has served on the Liverpool City Council for 45 years and is the current leader of the Liberal Party, a position he has been in since 2002. Now, onwards with the questions. Our first question for tonight is, what do the Liberal Party stand for and what differentiates them from the Liberal Democrats?
Well, the Liberal Party stands for some very traditional liberal values, and that is a strong belief in the work ethic, a strong belief in simplified taxation systems, encouraging people to work and save. And that's why for instance, we've been strong advocates of, instead of getting rid of national insurance, just actually raising the tax thresholds and approximately 5 million people could be taken out of the tax system and the benefits trap by doing so. We'd like to encourage more people to study. We'd like to see the cap on people working for 16 hours, for studying for 16 hours and not being able to claim benefits as being counterproductive. We believe in a bit of a wealth redistribution with some exemptions on inheritance tax is being abolished, and using the capital gains of one generation to help education and business grants for the next generation. Like the American Liberals, we're very strong believers in encouraging small businesses, and it's one of the reasons we have a strong view that we should be raising VAT thresholds to enable small businesses to get off the ground and sustain themselves in the early years. And we also believe that employment law should actually give smaller businesses a more fairer, equitable balance. There should be more emphasis on what is reasonable for a small business to do, rather than did they comply with timescales and paper processing and meeting very artificial time constraints. So we're trying to support small businesses, and we have a very internationalist outlook. And one of the reasons we were critical of the EU was that we'd like to see Britain open up more as a trading partner. We have been a long-term cultural partner with large parts of the world, and I think we've lost our place in the world marketplace because of it. When it comes to having differences with the Liberal Democrats, I'm going to be honest, it's very difficult, because the Liberal Democrats change whatever they believe so often. And I'm going to be honest, I find it really problematic. They say one thing in public, like, for instance, in the build-up towards the coalition, they were condemning all austerity measures. And as soon as the election was over, well, they were trying to negotiate with both the Conservatives and the Labour Party for greater austerity, saying exactly the opposite what they said during the election. I just don't find them a very reliable or a coherent or a very honest partner. And it's hard to have people and have a difference with people when they're the shifting sands. I think the Liberal Party is the rock of ages for liberalism, and the Liberal Democrats are the shifting sands.
Thank you. That's quite a good characterization. I mean, but would it be fair to characterize your party as more like culturally left, but then economically on the right? And what would you say differentiates liberals from libertarians?
I think we are socially a progressive party. We've had a strong commitment to, we campaigned for gay marriage before other parties did. We actually had, in my council, Liverpool was second behind London to introduce civic partnership registers. We are, in many ways, more economically conservative, as in emphasis on work ethic and encouraging people to work and reduce the amount of burden of administration on small businesses. So yes, economically, some people would call that conservative. I actually say that's traditional liberalism, encouraging people to work, encouraging people to save, and giving people a chance to, step up the social and economic ladder while still having a strong support for community infrastructure and educational achievement, and encouraging people from disadvantaged backgrounds to socially progress. And I think that combination is where liberalism has always been. And I do find with some of the libertarians, I think some of their views are quite extreme. I think the idea of having no state is unrealistic, because we do live in communities. We do provide education services. We do provide a health service. They're important for people to have freedom. If you can't work and you can't get your health and you can't get your children's education, then you really have very little freedom in a modern society. So I just don't think libertarians are very realistic. I understand where they're coming from. In the same way, I don't think anarchists are very realistic. Liberalism has always combined a view of economic liberalism, about encouraging the economy, encouraging competition, including breaking down monopolies. And liberals have always believed in progressive taxation and believe in decent public services to help lift up people, or give people the framework to lift themselves out of poverty or disadvantage. And that combination is where the Liberal Party is at.
Interesting. And Max, did you have any questions? What do you think about that?
What are the Liberal Party's plans for the next general election?
We are going to be targeting, we are financially restricted like most parties are, and under the first party post system, it is hard to make mileage, as we all know. We will be targeting areas of growth where we've got a good Liberal presence. We fielded candidates throughout Cornwall last general election, and we'll do the same again. We'll field a complement of Liberal Party candidates in Merseyside, and then we'll be picking a scattering candidates in other areas like Lincoln. And we have had a significant increase recently in membership and activity in Scotland, and we hope to be making some inroads into the Scottish political scene.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I suppose Max and I are both from the Social Democrat Party, and we're kind of, you could say we're kind of opposite from the Liberals, because we're more culturally on the culturally on the right, but then economically on the left. So it's quite interesting to have you on. But one of the things we wanted to ask you about, that's been in the news just this week, and also the last couple of months, has been the high number of Chinese spies caught in the UK. We had 3 courts charged this week, 2 last month, and then the cyber attack, which is suspected to be China. So what are your views on this? What do you think the UK can do about it? And what do you think about the foreign espionage and subversion threat more generally?
I think we've got to take them very seriously, and we also got to be also honest about, we've had a long history of economic espionage, of people stealing scientific advantages in the UK companies and copying them abroad. So I've always been very conscious of that. I think we should be very realistic about the view that the majority of the Chinese companies are not independent of the state. They're paid to the state structure. They may be subsidized by the state. And we've got to be careful about what I would deem as unfair competition. But I don't think it's just in China. I think we've got a broader view. I do worry about open-ended borders in the UK being abused and asylum applications being abused. And I'm going to be honest, we're hearing suggestions, and I put it as loosely as that, of Iranian state agents trying to intimidate Iranian academics who are on the liberal side politically, living in the area. And we've had instances of where, in fairness, asylum seekers have actually brought to the attention of authorities other asylum seekers who are engaged in potentially terrorist activity. So I think we've got to be, more scrutinous about people coming in the country, and including people who are staying in the country after their permitted period of stay has been turned down or expired, or they've had their refugee applications refused. And I think this country has been incredibly slack. And I'm not having a pop at any political party. I think this country has been very unwise, and we need to get a more better grip on control of who comes in and out the country and what they're doing. And that's not just in respect of China. I think it's also in respect of Iran and some of their other players connected to Iran.
Yeah, I agree completely. But do you think there's kind of an unwillingness among politicians to take national security seriously when it comes to both immigration and terrorism? Because I saw in the news last week that two men have been accused in Manchester of plotting an Islamic State inspired machine gun attack on Jews, which seemed to have just gone under the radar. Hasn't been discussed. Why do you think that is?
I think you're absolutely right. I think our secret services do an excellent job, and I know they have intervened very low key, not in the public forum, in several cases in my own community, which we are very grateful for. But I think as a society, and I'm going back to the old war films. Loose talk can tell everybody should be part of the security of the country. I think the wider public needs to be engaged more in being more conscious of security and the influences that are going around. And I think there are elements. I'm going to be honest, I've heard some of the broadcasts of hate preachers who are in the UK and living off the state. And that appalls me. I find that really deeply offensive, that people are in this country who are determined to stand against everything this country stands for and living off those of us who are going to work every day and paying our taxes.
Thanks. Yeah, that's quite a well thought out view, I think. But Max, just to bring you in, what do you think about the growing anti-Semitism and extremism in the UK? Do you agree that more needs to be done, or what? How do we balance that against civil liberties?
Can I just add one thing? I think it's very, very telling in this country, and I think it's approximately 72% of asylum seekers are given asylum status, often after protracted appeals in the UK. And the equivalent share in France is 25%. Now, someone's got it dramatically wrong. And I think it's the UK's got dramatically wrong. There's a reason why asylum seekers are giving a predominant target to come to the UK. And we're seen as a soft touch. And I think all parties across the board need to listen to the public and say, hang on, we need to have a better grip of who comes in the country, who stays in the country. I'm a great advocate. I worked in an international telecoms firm. Having overseas engineers and software engineers and students here is a great plus for the country. But we don't need to have the economy flooded with large bow waves of people with low levels of skills, and that giving us an economic problem. It's also giving us a social problem, and is giving us a social disconnect. And I think all the parties have got to actually bite the bullet, listen to the community, and take a more critical view and take a more robust view of who's in the country, who leaves the country, and what they're doing whilst they're in this country.
Yeah, I think that's quite a I'd agree with you on that. But I mean, I was looking at the Liberal Party policies, and it looks like the Liberal Party is quite liberal on immigration. Wants to get rid of the cap, for example. But at the moment, it seems like we can't really deport anyone, extreme or.
No, I would clarify in saying the Liberal Party don't believe in just looking at numbers, but we do believe that we should have a skills approach to immigration. We should be looking at the skills that are needed in the country, looking at who's going to bring those skills in the country, and not be a free-for-all. And I'm also going to say we're quite upbeat we should give a preference to those countries who have historical, economic, and cultural links with us. And I say that's what people call the Commonwealth of Nations, or what was formerly known as the British Commonwealth. And I think we should recognise our long-term partnership with those countries. And I'm going to be honest, I don't understand we're taking large numbers of people from French-speaking Central Africa who could go to France in comparison.
Yes, yeah, I think I think that's a view that's shared by quite a lot of people. But Max, what do you think about what Steve has said so far?
I think that with the migration, small boat crossings, I think that they are there's too much. Thousands of them coming through every day. The UK, I definitely agree that the UK is seen as a soft touch and that they are targeting the UK. We need to do something to control our borders. I don't think that the way the government is trying to push it via sending them to Rwanda, I think the Rwanda policy is stupid and we just need to send them back to France.
Well, we need a returns agreement. We need a returns agreement with the EU for that, and they've not. They've said that they're not willing to give us that at the moment.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I speak to a lot of people. There's a lot of people in my community who are long distance drivers and people who've travelled to France, and they actually say they watch the French police force watching immigrants get on the boats and come to the UK. They see people trying to get onto British lorries without any impediment from the French authorities. I think we've got to be honest. We need to actually think about actually turning the boats back, physically turning them back, because until we do, we're just going to take mark. I can actually understand why the government's pursuing Rwanda, because in the case of Rwanda, it's about trying to build in a consciousness of you won't stay here. But there have been deals done with Albania, for instance, to return Albanians coming to this country. And I think we just need to be more robust. And I have to say, if some of the court's decisions on appeals are appalling. I've personally been a witness to several gay members of the Arabic communities who were under genuine fear of being murdered if they return to their home countries. But when you get refugee agencies telling every Tom, Dick and Harry or Mohammed to say that they're gay or they've converted to Christianity as a way of winning their asylum appeal, when you go on their Facebook sites, you can see that they're certainly not gay and living with their families and everything. I think we really have we are letting the system's letting us down. The sheer numbers of asylum cases being agreed in the UK at 72% or thereabouts, compared to France being slightly touch of 25%. There's something seriously wrong. The judicial system, the scrutiny system, and the vetting system. And we need to get a grip of it, because otherwise the public are losing patience with all the mainstream parties and with the government. And I really do fear what the consequences would be if we don't take on board people's genuine concerns, as well as the security of the country. And I know of certain incidents in my own ward over the last year where, security has been compromised.
Yeah, absolutely. I think security definitely is going to play a big part in the next election. And I mean, yeah, I understand why people don't like the Rwanda plan, but I think it certainly is better than what we have right now, which is an open border. I mean, it's quite interesting. You give your view that there should be pushbacks, because we interviewed the Social Democratic Party leader William Clouston on this podcast a few months ago, and he said that we did ask him about this idea of pushbacks on the channel, and he said that it wouldn't survive the first capsizing. I mean, he said it might be okay in the summer when the weather's not so bad, but in winter conditions at night, it could lead to quite a lot of deaths. So, what would your response be?
I've got a lot of respect for William Clouston, and I did an LBC interview with him, and I think we actually had a lot of areas of agreement, and I don't make any apologies for that. I'm going to be honest. I often thought many of the contributions of David Owen, even as leader of the SDP, were far more astute and actually far more liberal than some of the views of the people who he was politically in a different camp. So
we're not going to be getting a return to the SDP Liberal Alliance then.
Well, can I always say, I always thought that if the alliance was a genuine alliance of people from different traditions focusing on what they have in common together, rather than a backdoor to create a new party that wasn't liberal, wasn't social democrat, and just bleeding seeking power, I actually don't have a problem with an alliance as such. What I do have a problem with is people creating a opportunistic centre party that believes in nothing, stands for nothing, and just keeps rebranding itself. And I call the Liberal Democrats the slits. They slid out of the SDP, they slid out of the Liberal Party, and they slid into the arms of the Tory Party.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's not just a problem with the Lib Dems. I mean, I'd say the same thing about the Conservatives and Labour. I mean, especially Labour under Keir Starmer. They seem to just be, Keir Starmer seems to be just seeing which way the wind blows, and if you don't like these opinions,
well, actually, no, I would say it's slightly different. I say that respectively. I think Keir Starmer has taken a tactical view that he is determined to break the hegemony of the Tory Party, and by repositioning the Labour Party into the centre ground of where the Conservative Party would normally be seen to be. And whether we agree with that or whether we disagree with that, and whether we would trust that once he's elected is a different issue. And I think the welcoming of a fairly right-wing member for Dover and Deal really has been a wake-up call for a lot of Labour voters to say, hang on, what sort of party are we anymore? But I think Keir Starmer has made a calculation. He's made a calculation on the nature of our voting system. And this is why I would believe with other parties and people of some of the main parties as well, we need electoral reform, because at the moment we're getting politics of rush to the lowest common denominator. And I don't think that gives people real choice. And I think it actually breeds longer term cynicism. And that's why I've always believed in proportional representation. I mean, it's quite funny when after Liverpool had the most damning Max Corler report and details of abuse of power and assets being sold and contracts awarded with unsavoury connections, you would have thought that was the very time for Liverpool to call, never mind the rest of the UK, we need proportional representation to give us a more plural council. And the response for the Liberal Democrats is it's not the right time for PR. And that's why I say to you, it's very difficult to have a political difference with them. You don't know where they stand from one week to the next. But PR in local government, I think, would break down a lot of the one-party states, which are a recipe for complacency. It will open up pluralism. It's worked well in Scotland. I think it has worked well in Wales. And I think PR is absolutely needed. And it would avoid the necessity of a Keir Starmer driving to the centre ground and almost abandoning everything he actually believes in, or his party was told he believed in when he wanted to become leader, and then jettison week by week everything that was on the game plan.
Yeah. I mean, but Max and I both agree with proportional representation as well. And I think the Lib Dems might actually be the worst thing about proportional representation, because in Tory Lib Dem marginals like my seat in Chichester, they can just say, well, it's a two-horse race between us and the Tories, so vote for us to kick the Tories out.
In fact, I've got a leaflet.
The bar charts, don't they?
Leaflets. And they always have these bar charts.
Yeah, same here, yeah.
Well, I'm going to be honest, I think that worked for a while, but how do you tell people vote for us to keep the Tories out after when the opportunity they had to have a coalition with one or t'other was to keep the Tories in? And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are going direct from Conservative to to an effect, the Labour Party, is because they don't trust the Lib Dems what they will do. And I think that's with good reason. I think what happened with the Clegg coalition, it was like, never mind what we said during the election, never mind what we say we believe in, who's going to bung us a jag? And I think people can see through it. And I think the appeal for tactical voting Lib Dem has significantly diminished. Can people say, well, you said one thing and did the exact opposite? And I don't think everybody's got a memory span of a goldfish.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the system really allows them to get away with not having any ideas or a national plan. And
Well, I think the example is in Scotland. As soon as PR came in, the Lib Dems lost out incredibly, and the Conservative Party started to make a comeback, and that was also true of Wales. And if you don't have a clear identity politically, then and you depend on tactical voting, well, it's the first thing that goes out the window with PR. So I believe in PR because it's the right thing. It gives the voter the power. I don't believe in party lists. I believe every voter should be able to choose between candidates of the same party or candidates of different parties. It would be a great boost to local government, and it would be a great boost to, I think, Westminster. And I think some of the pitfalls we're seeing during this election play of Keir Starmer abandoning every one of his pledges as Labour leader wouldn't be a necessity. And I think we wouldn't be in this ball game, which I think is actually doing long-term damage to politics. I don't think it's infusing the electorate one way or t'other. And it's a bit like a dive to the lowest common denominator.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and talking about principles and liberal principles in particular, we wanted to know what you thought about civil liberties and drug reform, because of course Germany's recently legalized cannabis, whereas the UK, we've recently Parliament's voted to raise the smoking age every year and ban disposable vapes. So, what are your views on that? And especially the Lib Dems, they support legalizing cannabis and banning tobacco. So, what's your view on that?
Well, I don't think we should be banning tobacco and legalizing cannabis. I do think that legalizing some of the drugs, and including some of the drugs which are considered recreational drugs, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. However, I am very, very adamant we shouldn't be considering legalizing some of the more serious drugs. And I'm going to be honest, as a Liverpool councillor, I remember seeing a whole generation of young people in Liverpool wiped out or devastated medically when there was a great surge in heroin. And I do work with support some of our narcotics self-help groups. And I supported the needle exchange schemes, which reduced a lot of the blood infections that people were using injection drugs, saved thousands of lives. We pioneered here in Liverpool. And I think at one council debate, I was only two councillors out of 99 supported the harm reduction efforts being made by the health authority. I think we do need to take a balanced view. We do need to think about the criminalisation of the marketplace, and but I think we should also tread very warily. But also be consistent. And what messaging does it say to youngsters? Well, you can't have a vape, but you can have cannabis. It doesn't. There doesn't seem to be a coherent approach. So I think a more liberal approach of taxing. I think we naturally need to think about how we put more resources into helping people come away from drugs. We also need to look at people who are in the criminal justice system because of drug dependencies, and we need to be taking a more streamlined approach of getting them off drugs as part of criminal justice. But at the same time, we've got the absurdities of people on mental health problems with drug abuse or alcohol abuse get more benefits. I couldn't think of anything more insane. So I think we really need to do a deep dive and take a balanced view. Yes, I think a little bit of more liberalisation makes sense, but it's got to be consistent. But it's also got to be alongside steps to encourage people to take a more balanced lifestyle and recover their lifestyle, and be participating members of the community.
Thanks, Steve. Max, did you have the next question?
The next question is related to some recent education guidance issued by the government. What are your thoughts on schools being told not to teach about gender ideology?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I've campaigned for gay rights all my life, but I do have a real problem about the idea that someone can pick up a form or go into school and say, today I'm going to be Mary rather than Mark, or I'm going to be Harry rather than Harriet. I really do not understand some of the views taken on the gender the gender agenda, and I really do think we need to actually protect parental rights. The idea of teachers and medics and school children who are underage, of not being adults, changing their gender at school without the parents being consented is really dangerous. And I think parental rights over parents the rights of parents is really fundamental. And we shouldn't build a distrust between parents and teaching. So some people may say that's a more conservative view. I think it's actually about a liberal view, that you don't have the state knowing what's better for children than the parents do. I've defended single-sex education, even though I may not agree with it. Parents should have that choice. I've defended religious education, where people make a choice about religious schools, because choice is important. And the last Liberal government made a comprehensive view that where communities wanted a school of their preference, that we should support diversity in education. I think uniformity and the state knowing best are the enemies of liberalism, the enemies of parental control, and a coherent society. And I certainly put my side on the back front of defending parental rights.
I just find that I'm hearing it's like children transitioning in school and their teachers and everyone knowing about it, and then the parents not knowing, and the school keep it away from the parents.
I think that's absolutely appalling. And in fact, to be honest, I'll make it up front.
I agree.
The Liberal Democrats in Liverpool wanted to put a proposal unanimously across the parties that teachers support gender reassignment at schools without parental involvement. And the Liberal Party were the only party that said no. We actually robustly said no, over our dead body. We believe in parental rights. I think it's absolutely incoherent that a school can chat to you about your son or daughter's maths score, can say how they're getting on in history, but doesn't tell them the fact they've decided to change their sex on Monday when they come to school. It doesn't add up. And I think it would actually undermine the trust that's essential between parents and schools. And we in the Liberal Party were the people who said no way to the Lib Dems proposal on teaching staff going behind the backs of parents.
Absolutely, yeah, and I suppose, but I suppose there is a problem with education, in that, how involved should parents be in schooling? Because you say that parents need choice over schooling. Does that mean choice over like the curriculum, and just to really focus on this issue. How involved do you think parents should be, and how much of a say should they have in the teaching in school?
I'm going to be absolutely upfront. When you look at the schools which are successful in similar communities, they are the schools that galvanise parental involvement. If you look at different communities, and I have to say historically, but not now, Scots education was always considered very much more effective in working class communities, and partially because of its strong commitment from the culture and the culture of parents. That has clearly changed over the last decade adversely. But if you go across the city or you go across the country, the schools that perform against the trend are the schools that have a strong sense of identity and a strong sense of parental involvement down to the schoolroom level, and encouraging even families to come into the school, work with the school, and look at the parental needs and the children's needs. And those are the schools that are successful. And schools that shut out parents and know it's best are the schools that underperform. So let me make it actually quite clear to every single parent out there on your programme. The Liberal Party stands for parental rights, parental involvement, and community involvement. And that's why disproportionately some of our faith schools have been incredibly successful, and some of the schools which have not necessarily followed a uniform agenda have been good schools. And diversity is important, and one size doesn't fit all. And we believe in parental choice. And so if people want to say, where does the Liberal stand? I hope I've made that quite clear on education.
Thanks. Yeah, and I just like to bring Max in here a bit and ask well, and I'll ask both of you what, because in schools nowadays they have a personal social health education, or at least they did when I was at school, or PSC as they sometimes call it, or P4C. And that's sort of educating kids about things they need to know for life, I suppose, about like sex and drugs, but also things like pornography and other stuff. But I suppose there is a concern that if they're teaching about transgenderism, at what point does it become propaganda?
Well, I think some of the discussion is actually about at what age does that intervention take place. And I mean, I spoke to a very respected youth worker I know last week who said she was quite embarrassed when her 8-year-old was discussing about transgender that had been raised at school. And I think at that earlier age, is it necessary? I think we should let kids be able to grow up. And I think we just got to be a bit more sensitive. And again, I think the people who should call the shot are actually the parents. I think the idea of government knows best is incredibly dangerous. And government knows best is often whatever is the trend this week. And I'm going to be honest, I was always critical of Shirley Williams, who created these massive, enormous, comprehensive schools where people were just lost in the system. And this one size fits all, and a government minister knows best, and we're going to force every local authority to do community comprehensives on a massive scale, as one of the disasters of Shirley Williams. And with respect, that's why I'm not a social democrat.
Thanks. And Max, do you agree with what Steve has said about this issue?
Yes, I do. I think should be down to the parents. The parents need to know, and I totally agree with Steve. I think that personal social and religious education, I believe it should be from a firmly Christian and British perspective, teaching from the perspective of the majority religion in the UK, providing morality with a basis. We do need to learn about things like gay people and transgenderism, but leave anything to do with sexuality until they're teenagers. That's what I'd say about it.
I think on the Christian issue, can I make it quite clear? I am a trustee of a local church. I'm very, very cognizant of our Christian tradition in this country, but I have supported in Liverpool the establishment of a dual Catholic and Protestant school, which was quite profound for Liverpool. I've also been supportive of a dual Christian and Islamic school, and I think we've got some very good schools from a Jewish tradition. I think I do worry that there are those people who are militant atheists who are using their so-called support for lesbian and gay issues to penalise and discriminate against those people of religious faith. I've supported gay rights and opposed the oppression and discrimination against gay and harassment of gay people and lesbian people for decades, but I haven't done it to replace the discrimination and harassment against people of religious communities. And I think we are going from one repressed minority. I think people in this country who are Christians will actually feel, quite rightly so, we're now having a cultural discrimination against Christians. We have had, I thought the SNP leadership election, the way Kate Forbes was treated was absolutely appalling. She has the right to have her religious views, and she hasn't used those religious views to stop her supporting the political programme of the SNP. I thought Tim Farron was treated badly by the Lib Dems, and I think he also handled it badly because he should say, those are my personal views as a Christian, but that's what I'll do as an MP, and the two are different. And I think he actually fudged the issue, and I think that was unfortunate. I know David Alton, who I disagreed with his views on abortion, but I have the right to defend that he should have views of conscience and still be a member of the political party. And I think we are in an era now of cultural intolerance where everybody's got a jump on the latest bandwagon and anybody's views are seen somehow different are being harassed out, including the most recent case of a Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate in Sutton and Cheam. And I think that's repressive.
That's David Campanale.
Yeah, but I think it's very interesting. We don't see people of the Islamic faith being harangued about their religious views, which are often far more extreme on LGBT issues than Christians are. So I think, I'm going to be honest, I think those people of a Christian tradition can actually feel, hang on, we're not being given a fair play here, and we're being treated to a different parameter of scrutiny than those of other religious faiths who, in many ways, may have similar views or more extreme views. So I think tolerance is actually about saying you can listen to people. And I use an example. I moved a council debate for introducing equal age of consent in Liverpool, and there were two Liberal Democrat councillors who represented evangelical churches, Phil and Stuart, and they asked me about what my views, and they said they couldn't support me on an equal age of consent campaign. And I didn't go into haranguing them, and I didn't go into calling them names. I sat down and said, this is about whether we, and clause 28, whether we should be treated equally under the law or we should be blotted out of society. And I said, it's about equal rights. And I understand your reservations, but I want to talk them through. And I want to talk through the impact. And I talked to them about teaching staff being sacked because they were openly gay or had been found out to be gay. And that was at one time grounds for their dismissal. I talked to them about people in the armed services who were gay being sacked as a security risk, when actually being openly gay wasn't the risk, being closeted gay was the risk. And I find if you talk through to people from different traditions, rather than say you can't have those views, you can't express those views, if you draw those views out and debate with them, that is the basis of creating change. And the two councillors on the vote didn't vote with us, but they showed respect and said, "We hear what you're saying. We understand where your concerns are. We'll abstain." And I'm going to be honest, I led the lobbying, and we were the only council in the whole of England in Liverpool that voted against Margaret Thatcher's Clause 28 unanimously. And that was because we persuaded those people from different traditions, not shouted at them, not saying they shouldn't have their religious views, not talked down to them, but persuaded them what the impact was of those policies on lesbian, gay people being able to feel we can walk down the street and be equal in society. And I think I really do find it incredibly distasteful that we're actually entering an era of intolerance where someone can't have a different view than I have. The idea in Scotland that people should be reported for hate crime speech within their own homes. Wow. I thought that sort of legislation existed in Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, getting the kids to report on the parents. I think really we are going too far. We need to know tolerance is actually about, someone can say something I don't like. Yeah, big deal. And I've got the right to reply and say something that they don't like. And if they get upset, well, we're all adults. Freedom of speech is absolutely being undermined in this country, culturally and as well as legally. And we need a more robust defence of freedom of speech. Churchill said, I will defend the right to you say something I profoundly disagree with. And he's absolutely right. That liberal value is being undermined in this country. And we in the Liberal Party are determined that hate speech should be about inciting violence and targeting of minorities, which is why it was introduced. And I was on the Home Office steering group that looked at that legislation. It shouldn't be used as a weapon to discriminate people having different views religiously, politically. And we need to actually defend freedom of speech. And if people are listening out there, that's what the Liberal Party stands for. And that's why we're not the Liberal Democrats. We know what we believe in.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we'd all agree that free speech is important, and it is interesting that there have been numerous cases of teachers being suspended for not accepting the preferred pronoun of a pupil, and especially Christian teachers. It puts them in a difficult position.
Well, I think just humanly, if you've known someone to come in every day for the last 5 years as Mark, telling me they're Margaret on Monday doesn't stack up. It's just human nature. You just refer to people as you've always referred to them. I just think this is ridiculous. And we've seen that ridiculous situation where a male prisoner attacked two women in a Scots prison and said they had the right to be in the women's prison because they were now a woman. Well, going to be honest, I think we've got to look at women's safety first before compromising it.
Yeah, and there is an issue of competing rights that I think some liberals don't understand. And it's interesting that you said when you said earlier that the parents know best. It made me think a bit about what John Stuart Mill said. He said that censorship doesn't just come from the state; it also comes from society. And there have been quite a few cases where you could say parents have gotten a bit too involved in the school curriculum and what's being taught.
Yes, I agree. But I think we've got to look at parents as a community and then setting a standard as a school. We've got to give that sort of some respect. And I think a bit of diversity in school. I mean, I went to a private school where had a very military tradition, and there was a private school nearby which had a very sort of a hippie culture. I think we've got to be honest. An element of diversity in business or in culture is the engine of change. Uniformity is the greatest danger to create a stagnant economy. Uniformity is a danger to create a stagnant society. And diversity, has its problems, but it's also the engine driver for change. And that's what liberals have always believed. And that's why we in the Liberal Party still believe it, and we defend that. and that sometimes may mean you defend people you don't agree with, or you may defend some choices you may not prefer for yourself. But freedom, a free society, is absolutely imperative. The state having a monopoly over what people can say in their homes is not a liberal society.
Yeah, it was interesting you brought in diversity, because I suppose there's a bit of a contention over the meaning of multiculturalism. Like on education, for example, does it mean having lots of faith schools that don't, where you have like a Muslim school, Christian school, Hindu school, or is it more about, the French model where maybe you have schools that are mixed or dual religion schools?
Well, we've got some very positive experiments with dual religious schools, and I'm going to be honest, one of the dual religions is actually Catholic and Protestant. It's one of the biggest divisions historically in Liverpool. So we have got some positive examples, but we've got to let communities come to it at their own pace. We've got some positive examples of joint Islamic and Christian schools. And we've got some very successful single-sex schools in my part of the city, which the Labour Council once tried to destroy. And I think we've got to defend parental choice. And that includes defending the right of a parent to make it a choice that you wouldn't make.
Thanks. And I think we're going to move on to the final thoughts. But Max, do you have any last questions for Steve, or do you want to give your thoughts on what he said?
I would like to say I am a Christian and I am in the school system today, and I've received lots of bullying and discrimination over my religion, and I really thank Steve for pointing that out. There was a period where every day I'd be heckled as I walked past, simply because I believe in God. And there is a rise in this militant atheism, and I think it's really underestimated.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I spoke at a public debate with Peter Tatchell, who, by the way, I have an incredible lot of respect, and at a public debate on the gay community over. I actually said I thought his intervention in Westminster Abbey was counterproductive for those in the gay community campaigning for a more open, inclusive church. I thought his actions were counterproductive, but reflected his own personal atheistic agenda rather than a real strategic approach to support lesbian and gay rights. And I thought it was counterproductive. And Peter, in fairness, respected me for expressing those views, and I debated with them in public. And I stick to this phrase. I didn't campaign for lesbian and gay rights all my life to have it replaced with the oppression and harassment of faith communities, and particularly in this country, now the Christian community. Tolerance is about respecting others, whether we agree with them or not. And I think we've got a culture of now replacing one intolerance with a more severe intolerance and a uniformity which is equally, if not more so, dangerous.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I suppose I just have one more question. It's something I was thinking about earlier this week, is that, over time, we have the internet now, lots more information. We're also a more diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. But why is it that as we've become more diverse, we've become less tolerant, you could say? Because, that seems to me to be a bit of a paradox.
Oh, I'm going to be honest. I actually think the United Kingdom, and actually by most standards, is an incredibly tolerant society. If you look at comparisons with other cultures and other societies, we are still recognised as a very tolerant country. So I think we've got to put that in context. But that tolerance does mean we've got to be careful about, I think, defending those freedoms. And we can't just lambast people who have different views and then expect a free and tolerant society to remain. That's the intolerance. The greatest danger to intolerance is tolerance is uniformity.
Thank you very much, Steve, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure, and
Been a pleasure.
We'd love to have you on another time. But yeah, cheers.
Yeah, smashing, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope I didn't evade the issues, and I give a personal perspective. I wouldn't say all my colleagues necessarily agree with every nuance that was said, but that's the basis of being a Liberal Party.
Yeah.
We actually believe every one of our members in public office should be able to use their own individual judgment and follow their conscience with some broad liberal values, but take a evaluation of the merits of any debate. That's the strength of being Liberals.
Absolutely, yeah. We agree with, I think most of what you said, especially about free speech and tolerance. Wouldn't you say, Max?
I think those topics. I think that I'm not a liberal. I'm socially conservative, but I honestly completely respect. I'd rather see the Liberal Party do well than any of the big parties. I honestly wish you the best. I don't agree, but I think you are tackling the issues respectfully and constructively, and you're doing something that the other parties aren't.
And also, we're standing up to some of the fads that the other parties are just getting swept along with, and they're not getting they've not got their finger on the pulse with what the community would really want us to do. So, thank you very much, gents, and have a nice night. And I say, God bless.
God bless.
God bless you, Steve.
Good night.